Welcome to Over a Glass, and this is episode 2. And today we're talking about food and wine pairing. Now, food and wine is probably one of my favorite topics because it is probably one of the most useful topics in wine. It translates into real world very quickly. The tips you get can help you to select wines when you go out to eat, whenever we start doing that again, or when you go and pick up bottles, depending on what you're going to be serving for a meal or when you're entertaining. Now, I have 10 rules that I use to guide me when pairing food and wine. And I just did 6 in a class that I held in Toronto, and I have the second class. We will do the last 4. But in this video, you're going to get all 10. Now, the first 3, I call them overarching rules because they don't go down to the details. They're just huge guidelines that you can use when pairing food and wine. Number 1 is to be aware of aroma and taste. So the aromas in the wine and the taste in the food. For the most part, you want to match those. There are times when you will need to do an opposite, but we'll get into that later. Number 2 is the weight in the food and wine. This is an easy one. You want to pair heavy dishes with a heavy-bodied wine, and you want to pair lighter dishes with a lighter-bodied wine. Heavy-bodied wine, just think of big, bold red like a Shiraz, and a lighter-bodied wine would be something like a Pinot Grigio that you would have with your fish. Number 3 is intensity. Now, intensity can somewhat substitute for body. Saying that to say, if you are having a meal that is heavy, like a pasta dish or a cheese, or something that will coat your mouth, something with fat, you can use intensity to help balance that. Intense wine is something that is high in acidities, like a Riesling or a Sauvignon Blanc. Those pair well with fatty dishes. Now we're getting into the details. Number 4, acidity. If you're having a dish with a lot of acidity, so a salad with vinaigrette, something with lemon, you want to get a wine that's also very high in acidity. What acidity will do is strip the wine of its acidity, and that will allow the wine to taste a little bit more fruity. And if the wine lacks acidity, it will cause the wine to taste flabby, and you don't want that. Number 5, bitterness. Now we're talking about olives, almonds. If you're having something with some bitterness, every time I'm recording, somebody's doing something. 5 is bitterness. Both the wine and the food can be bitter. So if you're having a dish with, say, olives or almonds, you can expect some bitterness in that dish. What you want to do is to make sure the wine doesn't have a lot of tannin. Both bitterness and tannin does the same thing to your mouth. It dries it out. So you want to make sure you have a fruit-forward wine that's very low on tannin. I would say go for white. White wines don't tend to have tannin because they have limited to no contact to the skin and stem of grape, which is where tannin comes from. 6 is complexity. And I don't want you to confuse complexity with quality. I'm not saying one of the things has to be lesser in quality, but you do want one of either the wine or the meal to not be as complex. Now, a complex wine is described as a wine that when you keep returning to the wine, you find something extremely interesting about that wine. And a complex dish is quite similar. It is probably going to be a layered dish, and each time you take a bite, something appears. You don't want the wine and the food to be both complex. That's like 2 complex people in a relationship. It's too much. You need something a little simple. And as I said, it doesn't mean that the quality has to be low, because you're definitely not going to want to take out your extremely complex, expensive wine to have it with pizza. It's not about the quality, it's about the complexity. Number 7 is texture. Food has texture, crispy fries, buttery filet mignon. Wine has texture. Wine can be crispy, it can be silky, it can be smooth. And with this game, you want to match texture. So if you're having crispy fries, you probably want a very crisp wine. Number 8, and probably the easiest, salt. If you're having a salty dish, don't fear. Salt does wonders for food this season, and it does wonders for wine. It brings out the fruit element, it makes the wine taste rounder. Salt is good. Number 9 is heat. Now, heat is tough. Heat brings out the bitterness in wine. It makes the wine taste a lot more, the alcohol tastes a lot more aggressive. So with this one, if you're having something that's spicy, you want to go with a wine that's low in alcohol. And all you have to do is flip the bottle, take a look. You want something under 12% or less. And number 10 is the end, is the dessert, is the sweetness. Just like acidity, you need a wine to be able to stand up to the sweetness in a dessert. So you want to go with a wine that's extremely sweet with your dessert, like an ice wine. And those are my tips. Now you're ready to go out and order wines, buy wines based on what you're eating, and it can get a little bit more complex than that. In classes, I really break down and talk more into some of the details. Like, for example, complexity. You can, to some extent, break that rule and do a complex wine with a complex dish, but to do that, you need the complexity, some elements of the complexity in both to cancel out each other. For example, if the wine has smoky aromas and the food you're having has smoke in it, that will cancel out each other, allowing for the other elements to show up. So these rules are meant to be broken, but you gotta know the rules before you break them. That is a tip for life.